The single mother just wanted to protect her children from the rain. She hired a simple man to fix the house roof. She didn't know he was a millionaire disguised as a laborer. What he did after the storm left everyone in shock. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. The sun was setting on the horizon of Willow Creek, a simple neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago, when Lisa, Mitchell scribbled on a piece of paper with trembling fingers, "Need someone to fix the roof before Friday's storm. Payment negotiable." The message was direct, without flourishes, just like her entire existence had become in recent years. Widowed at 34, Lisa was raising her 10-year-old son Peter alone, while caring for her mother Cecilia, who lived between rare moments of lucidity and long hours lost in her own memories. The house where they lived was her father's last inheritance, an old family home that, like her, seemed to struggle to stay standing. Lisa posted the note on the bulletin board at Tony's bakery. Her last hope, before the dark clouds gathering on the horizon, would bring more than just water to her already complicated life. In the small market next door, gently swirling an expensive glass of wine, Henry Morris observed the movement in the bakery through the window. His tired eyes caught that woman's quick gesture. There was something in her determination that intrigued him. He didn't belong in that place. His Italian suit, even without a tie and with the top buttons undone, revealed he was far from his natural habitat. "Anything else, sir?" asked the attendant, interrupting his thoughts. Henry paid for the wine and, on impulse, crossed the street toward the bakery. When he read the note, something inexplicable made him tear the paper from the bulletin board and put it in his pocket. Perhaps it was destiny. Perhaps it was just the boredom of a man who no longer knew what to do with his own life. The next morning, while Lisa was preparing breakfast for her son before school, she heard knocks at the door. On the other side was a tall man with stubble, wearing clothes too simple for the expensive watch he tried to hide under his sleeve. "Good morning. I saw your ad about the roof," he said, with a politeness that didn't match his work clothes. Lisa hesitated, analyzing the stranger. It wasn't common for men like him to appear in neighborhoods like hers. "Do you work with renovations?" she asked, suspicious. "I've worked with construction my whole life," he replied, not completely lying. "May I take a look at the problem?" She nodded, still uncertain but without many options. The forecast announced torrential rain for the weekend, and the budget for an official contractor was out of the question. "Mom, who is it?" Peter appeared at the door, curious about the visitor. "A gentleman who came to see the roof, son." "My name is Henry," he introduced himself, extending his hand to the boy, who shook it with the formality of someone trying to appear older. "I'm Peter. Are you going to fix our house?" Henry smiled, something he hadn't done in months. "If your mother allows, I'll try to help." What Lisa didn't know, nor could she imagine, was that the man who was now carefully climbing to examine her broken roof had once commanded the construction of skyscrapers. Owner of Morris Construction, one of the largest contractors in the country, Henry was on the run. Not from justice, but from himself, after a corruption scandal, orchestrated by his own partners, had tarnished his name and distanced him from everything he had built. On the roof, Henry quickly diagnosed the problem. It was simple for someone with his knowledge, although complex for Lisa's pocket. Still, something made him decide to stay and help. Perhaps it was the opportunity to use his hands again to build instead of just signing papers. Or perhaps it was the honest look of that woman, so different from the self-interested looks he was accustomed to. "I can start today," he announced as he came down. "I have some tools in the car and can get the necessary materials." "How much will it cost?" Lisa asked, the concern evident in her voice. "We can negotiate later. The important thing is to start before it rains." While he went out to get the materials, Cecilia appeared in the living room, leaning on her cane. Her eyes, still bright despite her mental confusion, fixed on Henry's figure through the window. "Who is that man, Lisa?" she asked with surprising lucidity. "Someone who's going to fix the roof, Mom." The old woman shook her head, as if she knew something her daughter hadn't yet realized. He has sad eyes like your father's when he returned from the war. Eyes of someone who has seen the world collapse, but still believes he can rebuild it. Lisa hugged her mother, surprised by that moment of clarity. If only she knew how true the old woman's words were, perhaps she would have closed the door to Henry that morning. But fate, with its relentless irony, had already begun to weave the threads that would unite those two very different lives, and so desperately in need of salvation. At the Morris construction office miles away, Victor Archer was rereading for the 10th time the documents that incriminated his former partner. The plan had worked perfectly: remove Henry, take control of the company, and now negotiate with the Chinese conglomerate that wanted to enter the American market. Everything was perfect, except for one small detail. No one could find Henry to sign the final transfer of shares. We've searched all the luxury hotels, made contact with friends and family. He simply disappeared, reported Rebecca, his assistant and lover. Victor smiled, confident. He'll show up. Henry can't stay away from power for too long. What he couldn't imagine was that, at that exact moment, the powerful businessman he had betrayed was carrying shingles on the roof of a simple house, happier than he had been in years. The following days brought a strange routine to the Mitchell household. Henry arrived early, worked on the roof during the day, had lunch with the family, and sometimes helped Peter with his math lessons before leaving at dusk. To his surprise, he discovered he was sleeping better than he had in years, in the small rented room of a nearby boarding house. On a particularly hot afternoon, while Lisa was hanging clothes on the clothesline in the backyard, she noticed Henry speaking quietly on the phone. Words like shareholders and audit reached her ears, awakening the distrust that had been dormant in recent days. "Who are you really?" she asked when he hung up, the inevitable confrontation finally arriving. Henry hesitated, but something in those eyes prevented him from continuing to lie. "I'm not just a construction worker, Lisa. I have a complicated past." "Are you running from the police?" she asked, fear growing in her chest, not for herself, but for Peter, who was already beginning to admire this stranger. "No," he answered firmly. "I'm running from betrayals, from people I trusted who destroyed everything I built. But I'm not a criminal, I never was." It was a half-truth, sufficient for that moment, but insufficient to calm Lisa's heart, which had learned the hard way not to trust easily. "Finish the job by tomorrow and receive your payment. After that, I'd prefer you not to return," she said, the words coming out harsher than she intended. That night, as a light rain began to fall on the newly repaired roof, Lisa couldn't sleep. There was something about that man, something that intrigued and frightened her in equal measure. Peter was also restless, sad at the idea of not seeing his new friend anymore. "Why does Henry have to leave, Mom?" the boy asked during dinner. "Because his job is done, son. But he told me he was going to teach me how to make a school model." Lisa sighed, her heart tight. How to explain to a child that the adult world was full of complications, half-truths, and risks not worth taking? The next morning, Henry arrived earlier than usual. There was something different in his countenance, a new determination. When Lisa opened the door, he extended an envelope. "It's the receipt for the material I bought and the labor. I don't want payment." Lisa frowned, confused. "All work deserves payment." "Then consider that I've already received more than I deserved. Your trust, however brief, Peter's admiration, Cecilia's lunches. Some things are priceless, Lisa." Before she could respond, a black car parked in front of the house. A man in a suit got out and walked decisively towards them. "Henry Morris," he called, his voice authoritative. "We need to talk." Lisa's world seemed to spin. Morris, like the owner of the construction company that frequently appeared in the key newspapers, she looked at Henry, understanding finally dawning. "You're him, Henry Morris, the billionaire?" Henry nodded slightly, his eyes fixed on the newcomer. "What do you want, Torres?" "The federal police discovered everything, Henry. The fraud was exposed. Victor and his accomplices were indicted this morning. You were right all along." The pieces began to fit together in Lisa's mind. The news she had seen about a scandal involving a large construction company, The businessman who had disappeared. The reserved man who fixed her roof with the precision of a master. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked when they were alone again, the legal representative waiting discreetly in the car. "Because here, in this house, with you, I wasn't Henry Morris, the businessman. I was just Henry, the man, and that was worth more than any fortune." Lisa's eyes filled with tears, not of pity, but of an emotion she couldn't name. It was as if suddenly a new horizon had opened before her. "You need to go," she finally said. "I need to," he agreed, "but if you allow, I'd like to come back." In the weeks that followed, while Henry regained control of his company and worked to clear his name, the Mitchell house received a complete renovation. Not just the roof, but every corner that needed care. Lisa initially refused, but ended up accepting when Henry explained it would be a pilot project for a social program of his foundation. What began as a casual encounter prompted by a desperate note had transformed into something deeper. Two broken souls who together discovered that it was possible to rebuild much more than roofs. It was possible to rebuild entire lives. On a Sunday afternoon, while Peter played in the newly renovated yard and Cecilia rested on the renewed porch, Lisa found Henry watching the sunset. In his hands, framed, was the yellowed note she had left at the bakery. "I keep this to remember that the best things in life come from the most unexpected places," he said. Lisa smiled, timidly taking his hand, "and to remember that everyone deserves a second chance, even broken roofs." What they didn't know was that that moment of peace would be just the beginning of a much more turbulent journey. Because while they rebuilt their lives in that quiet corner of Willow Creek, powerful forces were conspiring to separate them again. Victor Archer would not easily accept defeat, and secrets from Lisa's past, which she believed were buried forever, threatened to resurface, testing not only their new love but also everything she had learned to believe in. In the distance, dark clouds were forming again on the horizon. A new storm was approaching. But this time the roof was prepared. The question was, would their hearts be equally ready to face what was to come? In the heart of Chicago, Victor Archer observed the city from the top of his skyscraper. The Cuban. Cigar between his fingers left a trail of smoke that mixed with the night mist. Beside him, on the black marble table, newspaper headlines announced Henry Morris's triumphant return to command of the company. "You said he was finished," complained Christina, his wife, helping herself to another glass of champagne. "And he was something brought him back." "Or someone," corrected Rebecca, entering the room with a tablet in her hands. "We found where he's been hiding for the last few weeks, a mediocre neighborhood called Willow Creek." Victor frowned, intrigued. "And what's there besides poverty?" "A woman." Rebecca slid her finger across the screen, revealing photos of Henry next to Lisa. "Lisa Mitchell, widow, a 10-year-old son, works as an administrative manager at a medical clinic." A slow smile formed on Victor's lips. "Interesting, it seems our friend has found a new weakness." Christina stood up, adjusting her expensive dress. "You promised you would end this obsession with Henry after he signed the transfer of Chinese shares." "Promises are like contracts, dear. There are always hidden clauses." The next morning, as Lisa was preparing Peter for school, an unexpected correspondence arrived. A formal invitation to a charity dinner from the Morris Foundation, addressed to her. The card, handwritten by Henry, simply said, "I know it's asking a lot, but I'd like you to know my world, just as I got to know yours." Lisa felt her heart accelerate. It was too big a step, entering the universe of Chicago's rich and powerful, so distant from everything she knew. But something inside her, something that had awakened since the arrival of that mysterious man, impelled her to accept new challenges. "Any problem, Mom?" asked Peter, noticing her hesitation. "None, son. Just an invitation I don't know if I should accept." From Henry, the boy smiled. "He promised to take me to see a building he's constructing. He said it has a helipad on top." Her son's enthusiasm only increased her apprehension. Was she allowing Peter to dream of a world that would never be theirs? Or worse, Was she using her son as an excuse to protect her own fragile heart? At the clinic where she worked, Lisa could barely concentrate. The invitation burned in her purse like a reminder that her orderly life was being run over by feelings and possibilities she had never considered. "Earth to Lisa," joked Claudia, her co-worker. "I've been calling you for 5 minutes. Dr. Maurice wants the monthly reports on his desk by the end of the day." "Sorry, I'm a bit distracted." "A bit? You're on another planet, and I bet that planet has a name and surname." Lisa blushed, uncomfortable with her friend's insight. "It's not what you're thinking. Henry and I are just acquaintances." "Acquaintances?" Claudia laughed. "I know that kind of acquaintance. It's the kind that makes your eyes sparkle like I haven't seen happen since, well, you know, since Charles." The unspoken name hung between them like a ghost. Charles, the husband Lisa had lost so suddenly 5 years ago. The man who had been her first and only love until then. Peter's father. "I'm afraid, Claudia," she finally confessed. "Afraid of getting involved in suffering again. Afraid of letting Peter get attached and then... and afraid of being happy," completed her friend, taking her hands. "But have you thought that maybe Charles would want you to move on, to find someone?" Claudia's words echoed in her mind all day. When she arrived home, she found Cecilia sitting at the kitchen table, leafing through an old photo album, an activity that doctors had recommended to stimulate her memory. "Look, Lisa," called the old woman, pointing to a yellowed photo. "Remember this day? Your father had just put up that swing in the backyard. You said it was too high, that you were afraid of falling. And do you know what he answered?" Lisa smiled, the memory coming back clearly. "He said that sometimes we need to climb higher to discover that we always had wings." "Exactly," agreed Cecilia, with a lucidity that was becoming increasingly rare. "I think it's time for you to discover your wings again, my daughter." That night, after putting Peter to bed, Lisa finally responded to the invitation. A simple "yes" sent by message which made her heart race like a teenager's. The response came almost immediately. "I'm glad. I'll send a car to pick you up at 7 p.m. on Saturday." Meanwhile, in the luxurious office of Morris Construction, Henry faced the skepticism of his legal team. "Are you sure about this, sir?" questioned Dr. Mendez, his lawyer for more than 2 decades. "The company is in a delicate moment. Any new scandal, even personal, could affect investor confidence." "What scandal could arise from a charity dinner, Doctor? You know well what I'm talking about. The press already speculates about your relationship with this lady, a middle-class widow from a peripheral neighborhood. The shareholders are nervous. The Chinese are watching your every step." Henry felt anger growing inside him. "The same shareholders who didn't lift a finger when Victor tried to destroy me? The same Chinese who negotiated behind my back?" "Business is business, sir. Feelings are another story." "Then perhaps it's time to rewrite that story," Henry replied, ending the conversation. What Henry didn't reveal to the lawyer, nor to anyone, was that his attraction to Lisa went beyond the romantic. There was something about her, something familiar that he couldn't explain, as if he already knew her from another life, another time, and this mystery intrigued him as much as her sincere eyes and silent strength. Saturday arrived with the speed of an avalanche for Lisa. Between choosing what to wear, her modest wardrobe had nothing suitable for a gala event, and organizing who would stay with Peter and Cecilia, she barely had time to process the growing anxiety. It was Claudia who came to her rescue, appearing with a midnight blue dress that she had worn only once at a wedding. "It's perfect for you," she insisted, pushing her into the bedroom. "It will highlight your eyes." When the driver sent by Henry rang the doorbell punctually at 7 p.m., Lisa felt as if she were about to jump off a cliff. Peter, excited at the idea of spending the night with Uncle Mark, barely said goodbye. Cecilia, on the other hand, held her hands for a long moment. "You look beautiful, my daughter, just like your grandmother in that carnival ball photo from 1952. Lisa smiled, kissing her mother's forehead. It was a good sign when Cecilia remembered such old details with precision. The car, a limousine that caused a stir in the neighborhood, glided silently through the streets of Chicago until reaching the imposing hotel where the event would be held. Lisa felt her stomach sink as she saw the crowd of elegant people entering the illuminated lobby. This was not her world. It would never be. But then, in the middle of the crowd, Henry was waiting for her. And when their eyes met, everything else seemed to disappear. "You came," he said simply, as if until the last moment he had doubted. "I came," she confirmed, accepting the arm he offered. What Lisa didn't notice as she entered the ballroom, alongside Henry, causing whispers and curious glances, was that among the guests was Victor Archer. And in his eyes, a calculating gleam revealed that the night was just beginning. Under the immense crystal chandeliers of the Grand Plaza Hotel, Lisa felt like Alice in Wonderland. Each person passing by seemed extracted from a celebrity magazine. Politicians, business people, artists, all circulating in a social dance choreographed by money and power. Henry guided her gently, introducing her to some people, strategically avoiding others. "Everyone is looking at us," whispered Lisa, uncomfortable. "They're looking at you," he corrected, "and I don't blame them for that." The comment made her blush, but didn't diminish her anxiety. This wasn't just a charity dinner, it was a public declaration. Henry Morris, the powerful, recently rehabilitated businessman, presenting to the world an unknown woman of humble origin. The implications were clear to everyone except perhaps to Lisa herself. From across the ballroom, Victor Archer didn't miss a single movement. At his side, Christina observed with clinical curiosity. "So this is Henry's great passion? I expected something more impressive." "Don't underestimate the obvious, my love. Her simplicity is exactly what attracted him. After being betrayed by people like us, Henry seeks authenticity." Christina raised a perfectly outlined eyebrow. "And how do you plan to use this against him?" Victor smiled, taking a sip of champagne. "All in good time. First, we need to get to know our surprise guest better." Meanwhile, Lisa found unexpected relief in conversing with Sophia Morris, Henry's sister. Unlike the hostile environment she expected, Sophia received her with genuine interest. "My brother hasn't stopped talking about you and your son," commented Sophia, leading her to a quieter corner. "It's refreshing to see him excited about something beyond concrete and steel." "I don't know if I'm the right person for him," confessed Lisa, surprised by her own sincerity in front of a stranger. "Our worlds are completely different," Sophia laughed, a melodious sound that reminded her of Henry's. "Different worlds? Do you know where we came from?" Lisa's confused look was answer enough. "Henry never told you. Our father was a construction foreman. We grew up in East Side. Henry started carrying bags of cement at 14. Our first house had leaks worse than yours." The revelation hit Lisa like lightning. Suddenly, many things made sense. Henry's ease with tools, his respect for workers, the lack of affectation in his gestures. Why did he never tell me this? My brother guards the past like a precious treasure. He only shares it with those who really matter. Sophia gently squeezed her hand. And apparently, you matter a lot. The conversation was interrupted when the lights dimmed, announcing the beginning of the formal ceremony. Henry, as host, took the stage to speak. His presence was magnetic, his voice firm as he spoke about the Morris Foundation's social project, a program to renovate homes in vulnerable areas. "We believe every American deserves a safe roof," he declared, his eyes finding Lisa's in the crowd. "And that sometimes it's by helping to fix someone's roof that we discover how to repair our own cracks." The audience applauded enthusiastically without understanding the personal message between the lines. But Lisa understood. Her hands trembled as she joined the applause, moved not only by the words, but by the vulnerability that Henry publicly demonstrated. It was at this moment that Victor chose to make his approach, appearing beside Lisa like a shadow. Inspiring, isn't it? Henry always knew how to charm an audience. Lisa turned, surprised. The man in front of her smiled with studied cordiality, but his eyes remained cold as ice. "Excuse me, we haven't been introduced," she replied, instinctively taking a step back. Victor Archer, former partner and, let's say, old friend of Henry. He extended his hand, which Lisa briefly shook. It must be fascinating for you, suddenly entering this world, a modern fairy tale story. The widow from the simple neighborhood and the billionaire, businessman. The condescending tone made Lisa raise her chin, pride momentarily overcoming insecurity. Life is rarely as simple as fairy tales, Mr. Archer. Ah, but the original tales were never simple, my dear. They were full of dangers, betrayals, and dark secrets, much like real life. Victor moved closer, lowering his voice. By the way, how is your brother-in-law? Still in Stateville Penitentiary? The color drained from Lisa's face. How did that man know about Roger, Charles's brother, whose mere mention was forbidden in her house? I see I've touched a sensitive point, continued Victor, satisfied with the effect of his words. Don't worry, your secrets are safe with me, for now. Before Lisa could respond, Henry returned, protectively placing an arm around her waist. His smile disappeared upon recognizing Victor. What are you doing here, Archer? I don't remember including you on the guest list. A kindness from your sister, perhaps. Sophia has always been more diplomatic than you. Victor inclined his head in a mocking reverence. I just came to welcome your charming companion. A pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Mitchell. When Victor finally moved away, Lisa felt physically ill. The perfect world she had begun to glimpse was crumbling, the shadows of the past threatening to engulf her. What did he say to you? Asked Henry, concerned about her pallor. Nothing important, she lied, forcing a smile. I'm just a little tired. I guess I'm not used to events like this. Henry agreed, solicitous. We can leave if you want. No, it's your big moment. I won't ruin that. The rest of the night passed like a blur for Lisa. Automatic smiles, conversations she barely remembered, glasses of champagne she didn't touch. On the outside, she maintained her composure. Inside, a whirlwind of thoughts consumed her. How did Victor know about Roger? What else did he know? And what would he do with that information? Meanwhile, from the opposite side of the ballroom, Victor observed the couple with satisfaction. The fish had taken the bait. Now it was just a matter of time until the hook was pulled. I think I found Henry's weakness, he murmured to Rebecca, who had just joined him. And it's not the woman herself, but what she hides. And what would that be? Victor drank the last sip of his drink, savoring not only the liquid but the anticipated taste of victory. A skeleton too big to fit in a suburban house closet, and definitely too big for the new and immaculate empire that Henry is trying to rebuild. On the way back home, inside the silent limousine, Lisa struggled against the impulse to tell Henry everything. About Roger, about the past she had tried to bury when she moved to Willow Creek, about the years of shame and fear that followed her brother-in-law's imprisonment. But how to explain that her late husband's brother was serving time for embezzling funds from a charitable foundation for children with cancer? How to admit that Charles, her beloved and idealized Charles, had died fleeing from the police after discovering he was an unwitting accomplice to his brother's crimes? You're so quiet, commented Henry, covering her hand with his. Did something happen? Lisa swallowed the lump in her throat. I'm just thinking about everything that's happening about us. And that scares you. Terrifies me, she admitted with a nervous laugh. I've always been so predictable, so cautious. And now I'm here returning from a gala dinner, beside a man who builds skyscrapers. Henry smiled, his eyes reflecting the city lights passing through the window. You know what attracted me to you from the first moment, your truth. In a world where I lived surrounded by lies and appearances, you were like a ray of sunshine after an endless storm. The words, so sincere, were like daggers in Lisa's heart. If he knew that her truth was built on careful omissions, on a past reconstructed like one of his buildings, brick by brick, hiding compromised foundations. When the car finally stopped in front of her house, Lisa hesitated before getting out. This was the moment to be honest, to reveal everything before Victor did it. Henry, she began, but the words died in her throat. Thank you for the night. It was unforgettable. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to back away if she wanted, But Lisa didn't back away. Their lips met in a soft, almost hesitant kiss, like two people who, after long separate journeys, finally find the way home. When they separated, Henry caressed her face with a tenderness that almost made her cry. "Good night, Lisa. Dream of perfect roofs," she smiled despite the anguish, "and you of solid foundations." As she watched the limousine drive away, Lisa didn't notice the dark car parked on the corner, nor the camera that recorded her every move. Inside that vehicle, the investigator hired by Victor was making meticulous notes. The first phase of the operation was complete. The next would be even more devastating. The next morning, Willow Creek woke up to an unusual surprise. A fleet of trucks from Morris Construction blocked the small street where Lisa lived. Workers, engineers, and even a landscape architect unloaded materials under the curious gaze of neighbors. "What's happening here?" asked Lisa, still in her robe, as she found a man consulting architectural plans in front of her house. "Good morning, Mrs. Mitchell. I'm Richard, chief engineer of the project. Mr. Morris sent us to start the renovations." "What renovations?" "He already fixed the roof." Richard smiled, accustomed to reactions of surprise. "Mr. Morris approved a complete project for your house. Structural renovation, new electrical system, landscaping, and an extension to accommodate. A studio for your son to develop his science projects." Lisa felt the blood drain from her face. This wasn't just a romantic gesture, it was an intrusion, an attempt to buy her affection with concrete and brick. "There's been a mistake," she stated firmly. "I didn't approve any of this." At that moment, Peter came running out of the house, his eyes shining with excitement at seeing the trucks and materials. "Wow, is Henry really going to build my laboratory? He said he was just thinking about it." "Peter, go back inside." "But, Mom." "Now, Peter." The boy obeyed. Disappointed and confused by his mother's reaction, Lisa turned to the engineer, trying to maintain her composure. "Please, stop everything. Take your men and materials away. I appreciate the intention, but I can't accept this." Richard seemed genuinely surprised. "Ma'am, Mr. Morris was emphatic about the urgency of this project. If there's any problem, perhaps it would be better to speak directly with him." As if invoked by the conversation, Lisa's cell phone rang, a new device that Henry had insisted she accept to facilitate communication. "Have you seen the surprise?" His voice overflowed with enthusiasm. "The engineers said they can finish everything in 3 weeks with teams working in shifts. Henry, you can't do this. You can't simply arrive and rebuild my house without consulting me." The silence on the other end revealed his confusion. "I thought you would be happy. Peter talked so much about wanting a space for his experiments, and your mother needs a room with accessibility, and it's not about that." Lisa felt tears of frustration accumulating. "It's about you not understanding that you can't simply buy people." "I never thought of buying you, Lisa. I just wanted to help." "I don't need that kind of help. I need you to respect me enough to consult me about decisions that affect my life and my son's." The wounded pride was palpable in Henry's voice when he finally responded, "The men will leave in half an hour. I'm sorry for the disturbance." The call ended before Lisa could say anything else. She leaned against the outer wall of the house, breathing deeply to contain the conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to call back and accept everything: the laboratory for Peter, the adapted room for Cecilia, the more comfortable life that Henry offered. But another part, deeper and more stubborn, knew that each brick of that renovation would be a brick in the wall that separated who she really was from who Henry believed she was. Inside the house, Peter watched through the window, his face pressed against the glass as the workers began to collect their equipment. "Why did you send them away, Mom?" he asked when Lisa entered. "Henry was just trying to be nice." Lisa sat beside her son, seeking words that a 10-year-old could understand. "Henry is very generous, but we can't accept such big gifts without talking first." "But you like him, don't you? Are you going to date?" The direct question caught her by surprise. "It's complicated, son." "Because of Dad?" Lisa hugged the boy, feeling her heart tighten. If only that were it. If the only ghost between her and Henry were the honored memory of Charles. Partially, she answered, carefully choosing her words, and also because sometimes adults have complicated stories. Peter stared at her with the surprising wisdom that children occasionally demonstrate. Henry told me that when he was a child, his father worked so hard that he was almost never home. He said he promised himself he would be different, that he would always have time for the people he loves. The toll. Simple words hit Lisa like a ray of clarity. Perhaps the awkward renovation, the laboratory for Peter, all of that wasn't an attempt to buy affection, but the only way Henry knew how to demonstrate love, building, creating safe spaces for the people he cared about. Her cell phone rang. Again, this time it wasn't Henry, but Claudia. "Turn on the TV now, channel 7. "What? Why?" "Just turn it on." With a growing sense of apprehension, Lisa turned on the small TV in the living room. The morning news displayed a photo of her alongside Henry at the previous night's event. The headline made her blood freeze. "The billionaire's new love has connections to financial scandal." The report, biased and full of insinuations, connected Lisa to her brother-in-law Roger's case, suggesting that she might have been complicit in the embezzlement and that her relationship with Henry was a strategy to access new funds. The lawyers for the Foundation for Support of Children with Cancer, harmed by the scheme commanded by Roger Mitchell, declared that they will request the reopening of investigations to determine the involvement of other family members, announced the reporter with false seriousness. Lisa turned off the TV with trembling hands. It was the nightmare becoming reality. Peter's eyes, wide and confused, burned in her conscience. "Mom, what is that? Why are they talking about Uncle Roger on TV?" Before she could respond, urgent knocks sounded at the door. It wasn't the workers returning, but Henry, his face pale with concern. "Did you see the news?" he asked, entering without ceremony. Lisa nodded, unable to speak. All the explanations she had rehearsed, all the carefully constructed half-truths, had crumbled like a house of cards. "Peter, go to your room, please," she asked, her voice trembling. "But Mom—" "Please, son, I need to talk with Henry." When they were alone, the silence weighed like a tombstone between them. It was Henry who broke it first. "Why didn't you tell me? About your brother-in-law, about Charles's involvement, about everything. How could I?" The tears finally won. "How could I say that my husband died fleeing from the police after discovering he was involved in his brother's crimes? That I changed my name, my city, rebuilt everything to protect Peter from that shame?" Henry took a step forward but hesitated, the abyss between them suddenly too vast. "I would have understood. More than anyone, I understand what it's like to be unfairly connected to the crimes of people close to you. It's not the same thing. You were a victim. I should have noticed, should have seen the signs that something was wrong with the money Roger brought, with the expensive gifts, with the inconsistent stories. You're not responsible for their mistakes, Lisa, but I am responsible for my silence now, for letting you get involved with me without knowing the truth, for exposing you and your company to yet another scandal." Henry ran his hand through his hair, clearly struggling with conflicting emotions. "It was Victor, wasn't it? He's behind this report. Does it matter? The story is true regardless of who exposed it. It matters because it proves this isn't about you or your past. It's about me. Victor is using you to get to me, to destabilize the company at the exact moment we're closing the contract with the Chinese." The revelation brought a new layer of pain for Lisa. So even this, the scandal, the public exposure of her shame, wasn't really about her. It was just collateral damage in the war between corporate titans. "You need to go," she finally said, gathering what remained of her dignity. "The reporters will soon be here, and you can't be seen with me, not now. I won't leave you to face this alone. I have no choice. I have Peter and my mother to protect." Henry stepped forward, taking her hands in his. "Come with me, all of you. I have a beach house, isolated, safe. You'll stay there until my lawyers resolve this situation. And then? Will we live on the run forever?" Lisa gently removed her hands. "I need to face this, Henry. It's the only way to finally free myself from the past." Before he could argue, the phone rang again. It was the director of Peter's school, informing her that reporters were at the door asking questions about the boy. The panic in Lisa's eyes was enough for Henry to realize that his priorities needed to change. This wasn't the time to convince her or to resolve their relationship. It was time to act, to protect. Call Peter, get only the essentials. You'll leave through the back. My driver is waiting at the end of the street. He'll take you to a safe place. Henry, don't argue, Lisa, not now. Do this for Peter. The mention of her son broke her resistance. In 15 minutes, Lisa, Peter and Cecilia were in Henry's armored car, leaving Willow Creek through the back street, while reporters accumulated at the main entrance. Where are we going? Asked Peter, his eyes wide with the unexpected adventure. Lisa, who had no answer, looked at Henry. To a new beginning, he replied, firmly holding her hand. To a place where we can rebuild not just roofs, but trust. As the car drove away, none of them noticed the solitary figure watching from the corner. Victor Archer smiled, satisfied with the chaos he had created. Or so he thought. What he didn't know was that Henry Morris, the man he had underestimated so many times, had learned to use even storms to his advantage. And that love, that feeling that Victor considered a weakness, would be the most solid foundation Henry had ever built. The rain fell mercilessly over Chicago, transforming the streets into rushing rivers and the sky into a gray canvas. Inside, the armored car that serpentined along the interstate toward Lake Geneva, the silence was almost as dense as the fog that covered the hills. Peter had fallen asleep in the back seat, his head resting on his grandmother's lap, who murmured lullabies from decades past. In the front seat, next to the driver, Henry spoke in a low voice on the phone, organizing what seemed to be a military operation. Lawyers were activated, contacts in the press alerted, trusted employees mobilized. Lisa observed the landscape blurred by rain, feeling strangely disconnected, as if watching a movie about someone else's life. Just 3 months ago, her biggest concern was getting money to fix a roof. Now she was fleeing from reporters, involved in a corporate war, her past exposed like an open wound. We're almost there, announced Henry, finally hanging up the phone. You'll be safe there. Where exactly is there? Asked Lisa, finding her voice for the first time in hours. Lake Geneva, a house that belonged to my mother. It's in the name of a foundation, can't be traced back to me. The mention of a beach. House in Lake Geneva made Lisa let out a humorless laugh. From the broken roof to a lakeside mansion, my life is turning into a soap opera. Henry tried to take her hand, but she gently withdrew it. It's not permanent, Lisa, just until we resolve the situation. Resolve? How exactly are we going to resolve the fact that my late husband's brother stole money from children with cancer? How are we going to resolve the fact that I lied about my past? How are we going to resolve the fact that your newly recovered reputation is again at risk because of me? Her voice rose more than she intended, causing Peter to stir restlessly in his sleep. Lisa breathed deeply, trying to control the internal storm that threatened to engulf her. I'm sorry, she murmured. I'm just scared. Henry nodded, understanding. I know, but I'm not worried about my reputation, Lisa. I'm worried about you, about Peter, about Cecilia. And believe me, I have experience in surviving scandals. The car finally left the highway, entering a private road surrounded by dense vegetation. After a few minutes, a lake house appeared, not an ostentatious mansion as Lisa had imagined, but an elegant and discreet construction, perfectly integrated into the natural landscape. It was my mother's refuge, explained Henry as the car parked. She came here when she needed to escape the city's hustle and social expectations. She said here she could just be herself. The words touched something deep in Lisa. How many times had she dreamed of a place like this, a sanctuary, where she didn't need to be the brave widow, the perfect mother, the dedicated daughter, where she could simply exist, with all her imperfections and scars. The house inside was cozy and luminous, with large windows facing the lake. Simple, but quality. Furniture, artwork that spoke of good taste without ostentation, books everywhere. Nothing there resembled the billionaire who graced the covers of business magazines. Peter woke up as they were carrying the few bags they managed to bring. His sleepy eyes widened at seeing the lake through the window. "Are we going to live at the lake?" he asked, suddenly awake and enthusiastic. "Just for a while, son," replied Lisa, forcing a reassuring smile. "You can stay as long as you need," assured Henry. "There's a ground floor room for Cecilia, with easy access to the garden. Peter can have the room with the small balcony, and you—" he hesitated, suddenly aware of the fine line he was treading, "can choose any of the others." The house had only 3 staff members, a couple who took care of maintenance and a nurse specialized in patients with Alzheimer's, all old acquaintances of the Morris family, of absolute trust. "Teresa will help with your mother," explained Henry. "She cared for mine in her last years. She's almost family." Lisa wanted to refuse, to say she didn't need help, that she had always taken care of Cecilia alone. But the truth was, she was exhausted, physically and emotionally, and the relief of sharing that burden, even temporarily, was too tempting to reject. While Peter enthusiastically explored the house and the lake, with the seemingly inexhaustible energy of a 10-year-old, Lisa and Henry sat on the covered porch, watching the rain that now fell gently on the lake. "We need to talk," she finally said. "Really talk. No half-truths, no omissions." Henry nodded, gravely. "Where do you want to start? From the beginning. Why did you really come to fix my roof that day?" The question caught him by surprise. Of all the questions he expected, about Victor, about the scandal, about the future, that one seemed almost trivial. But Henry understood its importance. It was the point where their stories began to intertwine. "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. I saw your note at the bakery and felt something. An impulse, perhaps. Or maybe it was just that, after months of building a new identity as just Henry, the simplicity of that task, fixing a roof, seemed comforting." Lisa accepted the answer, recognizing its sincerity. "My turn. I was never complicit in Roger's crimes. I never knew anything until until the accident." "I believe you," said Henry without hesitation. "But the media doesn't seek truths, it seeks stories, and Victor is more than willing to provide a convenient narrative. Why does he hate me so much? He doesn't even know me." "It's not about you. It's about me. About the fact that I came back, that I'm rebuilding what he tried to destroy, and mainly about the contract with the Chinese that will be signed next week. If he can tarnish my image again, the investors might back out." "And how much is this contract worth?" "Billions," Henry replied simply. "But it's not just the money. It's the future of the company. Thousands of jobs, urban development projects that can transform entire communities." The weight of that revelation fell on Lisa like a ton of bricks. What was at stake went far beyond their personal lives. It was bigger than both of them. "You should distance yourself from me," she said, the words cutting her own soul. "Publicly. Say you barely knew me, that you were deceived, anything that would appease the media and save your contract." Henry stared at her, incredulous. "Do you really think I would do that? That I would throw you to the wolves to save a business? It's not just about a business, you said it yourself. It's thousands of people, entire communities. And what would that make me, Lisa? What kind of man would I be if I abandoned the people I love at the first sign of a storm?" He moved closer, firmly holding her hands. "I've spent my life building things that endure, buildings that withstand earthquakes, bridges that support floods. I'm not going to build a relationship on a foundation of cowardice." The tears Lisa had contained all day finally overflowed. "I'm so afraid, Henry. Not for myself, but for Peter. He's already lost his father. He's already had to adapt to so many changes. And now this. Peter is stronger than you imagine. And more importantly, he has you. The woman who rebuilt an entire life from the rubble, who faced the world alone to protect him." Henry gently touched her face. "The woman I fell in love with." It was the first time he had said those words explicitly, and they hung between them, like a fragile and precious promise. Before Lisa could respond, Peter burst onto the porch, soaked and radiant. "Mom, there's a natural pool between the rocks, and Mr. Manuel said I can use the bodyboard tomorrow if the rain stops." The carefree joy of her son was a painful reminder of everything at risk. But it was also a ray of hope, proof that even in the darkest moments, life continued offering small, unexpected joys. First, a hot bath and hot chocolate, determined Lisa, easily falling into her role as mother. Then you can tell me all about this natural pool. While Peter ran inside, shaking water everywhere, Henry received a call. His countenance instantly changed, concern giving way to determination. What? When? He listened attentively to the response. Send Torres immediately and prepare the documents we discussed, all of them. When he hung up, Lisa observed him apprehensively. Bad news? Depends on the viewpoint. Henry smiled, but it was a different smile, that of the strategist, of the chess player about to execute a decisive move. Victor did exactly what I expected. He contacted our Chinese investors directly, suggesting that my involvement with a person of dubious reputation puts the project at risk. And that's not bad news? It would be if I hadn't spent the last 2 days preparing a complete dossier on Victor's own questionable activities, including how he tried to sabotage the project from the beginning and how he used privileged information to manipulate company shares. The calculating gleam in Henry's eyes was something new to Lisa, a glimpse of the ruthless businessman that existed behind the gentle roof fixer. You set a trap for him, she observed. Let's say I predicted his moves. Victor has always been predictable in his ambition. And I learned that sometimes you need to let the opponent advance to be able to counterattack effectively. Lisa felt a chill that had nothing to do with the lake breeze. This was a power game in which she had never participated, a world of strategies and counter-strategies where people like her, ordinary people with ordinary lives, were often just sacrificial pawns. And me? She finally asked. What role do I have in your strategy? The question hit him like a slap. The calculation disappeared from his eyes, replaced by something much more vulnerable. You were never part of any strategy, Lisa. You were the unforeseen, the variable that no equation could calculate, the factor that changed all the rules of the game. He moved closer, taking her face between his hands with a tenderness that contrasted drastically with the cold determination of moments before. Before I met you, I was fighting to recover my company, my reputation, my empire. After meeting you, I realized I was fighting for the wrong things all along. The rain finally stopped, as if the sky itself paused to hear that confession. On the horizon, the sun began to break through the clouds, casting golden rays over the agitated lake. And what are you fighting for now? Whispered Lisa, feeling that the answer could change everything or nothing. For a future where building something that lasts doesn't mean erecting walls, but tearing down barriers. For a place where Peter can grow up knowing that the past doesn't determine who we are. For a life where the roof that protects us isn't made of concrete but of truth. He hesitated, searching for words that could translate the complexity of what he felt. For us, Lisa, not for what we can be in the headlines or at social events, but for what we are when no one is looking. When I'm just a man who knows how to fix roofs, and you're just a woman too strong to ask for help. Those words, so simple and so profound, disarmed Lisa's last defenses. They weren't grandiose promises or dramatic declarations. They were the acknowledgement of a truth that both had discovered amid the rubble of their previous lives. Then let's fight together, she responded, sealing the silent pact with a kiss. What neither knew, as they embraced at sunset, was that the battle had barely begun, and that sometimes even the best-built roofs can't protect against all storms. In his luxurious office atop a skyscraper in Chicago, Victor Archer observed the city from his penthouse. The Cuban cigar between his fingers left a trail of smoke that mixed with the evening mist. Beside him, on the black marble table, newspaper headlines announced Henry Morris's triumphant return to command of the company. You said he was finished, complained Christina, his wife, helping herself to another glass of champagne, and he was. Something brought him back. Or someone, corrected Rebecca, entering the room with a tablet in her hands. We found where he's been hiding for the last few weeks, a mediocre neighborhood called Willow Creek. Victor frowned, intrigued. And what's there besides poverty? A woman, Rebecca slid her finger across the screen, revealing photos of Henry next to Lisa. Lisa Mitchell, widow, a 10-year-old son, works as an administrative manager at a medical clinic. A slow smile formed on Victor's lips. Interesting. It seems our friend has found a new weakness. Christina stood up, adjusting her expensive dress. You promised you would end this obsession with Henry after he signed the transfer of the Chinese shares. Promises are like contracts, dear. There are always hidden clauses. Meanwhile, in Lake Geneva, Judge Mendez had just issued a preventive detention order against Lisa. The accusation, complicity in embezzlement from the foundation and obstruction of justice. The world seemed to decelerate around Lisa. Arrest. The word echoed in her mind like a nightmare come true. Not just public shame, not just unfounded accusations, but the physical separation from Peter, from her mother, from everything she had fought to protect. This is ridiculous, protested Henry, his voice tense with anger. There's no evidence whatsoever. It's clearly persecution. Judge Mendez is Victor's personal friend, explained Sophia. The warrant was issued based exclusively on Roger's testimony, without any additional corroboration. How much time do we have? Asked Lisa, surprising both with her apparent calm. The warrant was issued an hour ago. If Victor knows where we are, the police could arrive at any moment. Henry picked up the phone, dialing quickly. Torres, we need the helicopter now. And contact Ribeiro. We need an urgent injunction nullifying the arrest warrant. While he organized the escape, Lisa remained strangely quiet, an internal storm contrasting with her impassive external appearance. Her entire adult life had been defined by escapes, from the truth, from the past, from the consequences. And now, when she had finally decided to face all this, reality was forcing her to flee again. No, she said finally, with a clarity that surprised even herself. I won't run. Henry interrupted his call, looking at her as if she had lost her mind. Lisa, this is no time for heroics. We're talking about imprisonment. We're talking about my life, Henry, my choices. She stood up, a silent dignity emanating from her being. If I run now, I'll be confirming all of Roger's lies. I'll be teaching Peter that, when things get tough, we run. I can't do that. Not anymore. I thought we had agreed to fight together, he argued, the concern evident in every line of his face. And we will, but this time, we'll fight the right way. Lisa approached, gently touching his face. You taught me this, you know, that sometimes facing the storm is braver than fleeing from it. Sophia observed the interaction with a mixture of admiration and concern. What do you propose then? I'll turn myself in voluntarily. With a lawyer present, of course, I'll contest the accusations through the appropriate legal channels while Clarice publishes her article. I'll show Peter that his mother has nothing to hide, nothing to fear. The silence that followed was loaded with conflicting emotions. Henry clearly struggled between the instinct to protect her at any cost and respect for her autonomy, for her courage. Are you sure? He finally asked, his voice almost a whisper. No, admitted Lisa with a small smile. I'm absolutely terrified, but sometimes the right path is the one that scares us the most. Henry observed her for a long moment, as if truly seeing her for the first time. Not as someone to be saved, not as a cause to be defended, but as an equal, a partner, a fellow fighter who had her own strength, her own convictions. I love you, he said simply, the words escaping before he could contain them. More than I thought it possible to love someone. Silent tears ran down Lisa's face. They weren't tears of fear or sadness, but of a particular kind of joy. The joy of being truly seen, truly understood. I love you too, she answered. That's why I need to do this, for us, for the future we want to build. As Sophia discreetly left the room to give them privacy, Henry pulled Lisa into a tight embrace, as if trying to imprint the sensation of her in his memory in case they were separated. If this is what you want, we'll do it the right way, he finally said, with the best criminal lawyer in the country, with a media strategy coordinated with Clarice's publication, with all the support we can gather. And Peter, asked Lisa, the only real vulnerability in her determination. He stays with me and Sophia, protected, loved, waiting for his mother to return stronger than ever. Outside, the fog was beginning to dissipate, gradually revealing the majestic outline of the hills. Like an omen, the sun cast rays through the retreating clouds, illuminating parts of the valley while others remained in shadow. Lisa knew that the days ahead would be the hardest of her life, that there would be moments when she would question this decision, when the longing for Peter would be almost unbearable, when the cell walls would seem to close in on her. But she also knew with a certainty that came from the depths of her being that this was the only possible choice if she truly wanted to rebuild. Not just a roof, not just a life, but an entire future. One step at a time, she murmured, more to herself than to Henry. Like building a house. Or rebuilding a life, he completed, sealing the promise with a kiss. Meanwhile, in Chicago, Victor Archer received the news of the arrest order with a satisfied smile. In his arrogance, he believed he had won the final battle. What he didn't know was that at that exact moment, Clarice Walker's article was being finalized, each word carefully chosen like a nail in the coffin of his ambitions, and that Lisa Mitchell, the woman he had judged to be just a sacrificial pawn, had decided to transform herself into the most powerful player on the board, one who isn't afraid to lose because she's already discovered what really matters: to win. The preventive detention facility where Lisa Mitchell was held was a sterile, antiseptic and cold construction, like any institution designed to contain rather than welcome. But if its creators intended those grey walls to break the spirit of those who inhabited them, they had failed dramatically in Lisa's case. 3 days had passed since her voluntary surrender to the authorities. 3 days of bureaucratic procedures, of reporters eager for sensational photos, of endless questions from detectives and prosecutors. Despite the evident wear on her face, a silent dignity accompanied her, a fact that didn't go unnoticed by the cameras that recorded her entrance into the police station. "Ms. Mitchell, your custody hearing is scheduled for this afternoon," informed Dr. Rachel Silver, the criminal lawyer Henry had hired, one of the most respected in the country, known for her sharp intelligence and unwavering ethics. "I'm confident we'll be able to reverse this preventive detention. It's clearly disproportionate and lacks solid legal foundation." Lisa nodded, grateful for the lawyer's competence and optimism, but aware that legal merit didn't always prevail over powerful influences. "Any news about Peter?" she asked, maternal concern temporarily overriding any worry about her own fate. "Henry says he's doing well, adapting to the circumstances with impressive resilience. Sophia has been wonderful with him." Rachel hesitated, clearly choosing her next words carefully. "He asks about you, of course, wants to know when you'll return home." The mention of home made Lisa reflect on how this concept had transformed in recent weeks. It was no longer just the small 2-story house in Willow Creek with its newly repaired roof. It was something more abstract and simultaneously more concrete, wherever Peter, Cecilia, and now Henry were. "And Clarice's report, has it been published?" A discreet smile formed on the lawyer's lips. "It came out this morning, simultaneously, in 3 international outlets, and being rapidly reproduced in all national portals. And here's devastating, Lisa. For Victor, for Judge Mendez, for everyone involved in the conspiracy. Clarice left no stone unturned. Documents, witnesses, detailed chronology of each manipulation." Rachel opened her folder, revealing printed copies of the report. "But the most impactful is your story. The way Clarice told it humanized the whole case. You're no longer the widow from the Mitchell case or the billionaire's new girlfriend. You're Lisa, a real woman with flaws and strengths who made difficult decisions to protect her son." Lisa leafed through the pages, her heart accelerating, as she saw her own life dissected in carefully constructed paragraphs. It was strange and simultaneously liberating to see her story told with such honesty, not as an innocent victim, not as a deceitful accomplice, but as a complex human being navigating extraordinarily difficult circumstances. "How's the repercussion?" "Explosive. Social media has been in an uproar. Innocent Lisa and corrupt Victor have been among the most commented topics since dawn. Several lawmakers are already calling for an investigation into Judge Mendez. and the Foundation for Children with Cancer issued an official statement distancing itself from Roger's declarations and expressing solidarity with you. The news brought the first genuine smile to Lisa's lips since her arrest. Not for the revenge against Victor, not for the public validation, but for the simple relief that the truth, her truth, was finally being heard. Does this change things for today's hearing? Absolutely. The public pressure is immense. No judge wants to be seen as maintaining a questionable detention when the whole case is crumbling. Rachel gathered her papers with renewed enthusiasm. I've just filed a habeas corpus with new evidence. I believe you'll be sleeping in your own bed tonight. A cautious hope blossomed in Lisa's chest, not just for her freedom, but for the possibility of a future without shadows, without running, without the constant fear of the past catching up. And Henry, where is he? Rachel smiled. Exactly where you'd expect, moving heaven and earth. The man hasn't slept in 72 hours, alternating between supporting Peter, coordinating the legal team, and personally ensuring that every journalist in the country has access to Clarice's report. For the first time in days, Lisa allowed herself a moment of vulnerability, a single tear escaping the tight control she had maintained since her surrender. He didn't have to do all this. His contract with the Chinese, his company, the contract was signed yesterday, interrupted Rachel, with full Chinese support. Apparently, they were more impressed by how Henry handled the crisis than concerned about the scandal itself. They called it, let me see, she consulted her notes, a demonstration of leadership integrity under fire. The irony wasn't lost on Lisa. The very scandal that Victor had orchestrated to destroy Henry had ended up strengthening his position. The universe had a strange sense of humor sometimes. A guard appeared at the cell door. Ms. Mitchell, it's time. Lisa stood up, straightening her simple clothes as best she could. Whatever happens, I want to thank you, and Henry, for believing in me. Thank me when we're celebrating your freedom, replied Rachel with a confident smile. And as for Henry, something tells me you'll have a lifetime to thank him personally. The courtroom was packed when Lisa entered, escorted by guards, but with her head held high. The media benches were filled with reporters furiously taking notes. The public area contained faces she didn't recognize, alongside some that surprised her. Colleagues from the clinic, neighbors from Willow Creek, and, most unexpectedly, a delegation from the Foundation for Children with Cancer, identifiable by their blue pins. Then she saw him. Henry sitting in the front row, his exhausted face lighting up when their eyes met. Beside him, Sophia. But what made Lisa's heart leap was the sight of her son, Peter, dressed in his Sunday best, looking both nervous and proud. All rise, announced the bailiff as Judge Eleanor Palmer entered. Not Judge Mendez, Lisa noted with surprise, a positive sign. The hearing proceeded with procedural formality, but the energy in the room was anything but routine. Rachel presented the habeas corpus with methodical precision, systematically dismantling each argument for Lisa's detention. The prosecutor, clearly on the defensive, offered only token resistance. Your Honor, Rachel concluded, my client voluntarily surrendered herself when she learned of the warrant, despite having ample opportunity to evade it. She has strong community ties, a minor son who depends on her, and an elderly mother with Alzheimer's. The accusations against her are based solely on the testimony of a convicted felon with clear motivations to lie. And most importantly, new evidence has emerged that strongly suggests this entire case was constructed as part of a corporate revenge scheme. I submit that there is no legal basis for her continued detention. Judge Palmer removed her glasses, surveying the courtroom before speaking. Having reviewed the evidence presented, I find the arguments for preventive detention grossly insufficient. Ms. Mitchell, you are released immediately, pending further investigation of these serious allegations of judicial manipulation. This court will also be referring the matter of Judge Mendez's involvement to the Judicial Ethics Committee. The gavel fell, and a wave of applause erupted from the gallery. Lisa stood, momentarily frozen, unable to process that it was really over. Then she felt small arms around her waist and looked down to see Peter's tearful face. "Mom, you're coming home." She knelt, hugging her son tightly, inhaling his familiar scent as if it were the most precious perfume in the world. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm coming home." When she looked up, Henry was there, his eyes red with exhaustion but shining with joy. No words were necessary as he helped her to her feet and enveloped both her and Peter in an embrace that felt like the safest place in the universe. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, cameras. Flashing questions shouted from all directions, but a path had been cleared through the chaos, Sophia's work no doubt, leading to a waiting car. "Miss Mitchell, how does it feel to be vindicated?" "Mr. Morris, is this a victory against Victor Archer?" "Peter, are you happy to have your mom back?" The boy, showing unexpected poise, turned to face the press. "My mom was always innocent. The bad guys tried to hurt her, but the truth won. And now we're going home." The simple statement, delivered with childlike certainty, silenced the reporters more effectively than any prepared speech could have. Lisa squeezed her son's hand, filled with pride at his resilience, his clarity, his unwavering faith. As they settled into the car, Lisa finally allowed herself to release the breath she felt she'd been holding for days. "What happens now?" she asked, looking between Henry and Sophia. "Now?" Henry smiled, taking her hand. "Now we rebuild. Together." The car pulled away from the courthouse, leaving behind the flashing cameras and shouting reporters. In the rearview mirror, Lisa could see them already turning their attention to a new arrival. Victor Archer, flanked by lawyers, his face a mask of barely contained fury as he faced the consequences of his schemes unraveling. But Lisa didn't look back for long. The future, uncertain as it might be, lay ahead, and for the first time in years she wasn't afraid to face it. Not with Peter's hand in hers, not with Henry's steady presence beside her, not with the truth finally free from the shadows. "One step at a time," she whispered, echoing her own words from days before. "One brick at a time," Henry responded, his smile carrying the promise of foundations yet to be built. The rain had stopped completely now, the sky clearing to reveal the first stars of evening, like distant beacons guiding them home, wherever and whatever that home might be. In the weeks that followed, a new rhythm established itself in their unconventional family. The scandal that had threatened to destroy them had, paradoxically, freed them, bringing into the open secrets that had festered in darkness for too long. The Morris Construction headquarters buzzed with renewed energy as the Chinese partnership launched a series of ambitious urban renewal projects. Henry, though still very much in command, had delegated more day-to-day operations, carving out time for what he now recognized as his true priority. Lisa returned to her job at the clinic, refusing Henry's offers to make arrangements for something more prestigious. "I built this life brick by brick," she had explained. "I'm not abandoning it just because circumstances have changed." Her conviction only deepened his respect for her. This woman, who could have easily embraced the comfort his wealth offered, insisted on maintaining her independence, her identity beyond their relationship. They had decided, after much discussion, to keep both homes, the simple house in Willow Creek and the lake house in Lake Geneva. The first represented roots, history, the foundation of who they were. The second offered space, freedom, a place to breathe when the world pressed too close. Peter thrived in this expanded universe, shuttling between urban school days and lakeside weekends, equally at home in both worlds. His science projects grew more ambitious with Henry's encouragement, though Lisa insisted that the laboratory remain modest rather than the state-of-the-art facility Henry had initially proposed. It was on a crisp autumn evening, as colored leaves danced across the lawn of the lake house, that Henry found Lisa sitting alone on the dock, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of amber and gold. "Penny, for your thoughts?" he asked, settling beside her. She smiled, leaning against his shoulder, just thinking about roofs. "Roofs?" he chuckled. "That's my line. I was thinking about how sometimes what seems like disaster, a broken roof, a storm coming, can be the beginning of something you never imagined possible. Henry nodded, his arm tightening around her. The best foundations are often built on the sites of previous collapses. Is that an official construction principle, Mr. Morris? More of a life observation, Miss Mitchell. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun complete its descent behind the distant shoreline. From inside the house came the sound of Peter's laughter as he played a board game with Sophia, while Cecilia, having a remarkably lucid day, called out advice from her favorite armchair. "I want to ask you something," Henry said finally, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "But I'm not sure if it's the right time." Lisa turned to face him, noting the unusual nervousness in his expression. "After everything we've been through, I think we're past worrying about right times, don't you?" He smiled, acknowledging the truth in her words. From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box, not the ostentatious jewelry case she might have expected from a billionaire, but something simple, vintage, clearly chosen with thought rather than flash. "This was my mother's," he explained, opening it to reveal a modest diamond ring set in platinum, its design elegant but understated. "She was the strongest woman I knew until I met you." Lisa's breath caught as he took her hand, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made the rest of the world fade away. "I'm not asking you to be a corporate wife or to change who you are. I'm asking if you'd consider building a life together, officially, permanently. A life where we each bring our own foundations and create something stronger together than either could alone." Tears blurred her vision, but Lisa didn't need to see clearly to know her answer. It had been forming in her heart since that first day when a stranger climbed onto her broken roof and saw beyond the damage to the strength beneath. "Yes," she whispered, her voice steadier than she expected. "Yes to building together. Yes to facing whatever storms come next. Yes to you, Henry." As he slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, as if it had been waiting for her all along, Peter's voice called from the house. "Mom! Henry! Grandma remembered where she hid her wedding album. She wants to show us right now." They laughed, the moment of private emotion seamlessly blending into family life, just as their separate paths had merged into a shared journey. "Perfect timing," Henry murmured, helping Lisa to her feet. "Shall we go see what wisdom Cecilia has for us today?" "Lead the way," she replied, their hands remaining intertwined as they walked back toward the warmly lit house. After all, you've always known how to find the path home. Inside, surrounded by the people who had become the pillars of her new life, Lisa felt a sense of completion she had once thought impossible. Not the end of the story, far from it, but perhaps the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, more hopeful one. The broken roof had been more than repaired. It had been transformed, and in its place stood something far stronger.